Guys, what you have to understand, this is kind of interesting. One of the things that we tend to do, and I was just mentioning this to someone else, is we have a tendency to reject the good for the perfect. Meaning by that we want to find someone that is perfect and does everything right who will then lead us, and the bottom line is that's never going to happen. We've talked many times about President Trump and various things that he's done wrong in his past, and at times things that he says. Guys, we don't actually push President Trump here, but the Republican Party is the only platform that has anything to do with God. The Democratic Party threw God out of their platform 8 years ago. Literally took that plank out, so it's not even a part of that. All the principles that they have are diametrically opposed to everything that we see in the Bible, transgender stuff, men competing with women in sports, men in your daughter's bathrooms, all the elements that are going to be there, along with everything else that God says is perversion, is wrong, etc. And so what you have to understand is we have to get over this idea that we're trying to somehow hire a pastor-in-chief. We're not. It's the commander-in-chief. That the reality is we understand that these people will be flawed. Think about all the representatives. You can point to lots of flaws in most of them. Some of them are actually really, really good. But the reality is guys, that we're not trying to put someone in there that is the moral equivalency of Jesus, because he doesn't exist. And so what we're looking for is this, and this is key. We want to understand that in 1 Timothy chapter 2, we always point to that, it says that we are to pray for those who are in authority so that we can lead a tranquil and quiet life in all godliness and dignity. And so God says that our responsibility, our whole point in being involved in considering this is to make our life as good as it can be, and the only way to do that is to find which party is going to most represent God's principles, whether they know it or not. That's why we talk about common sense around here a lot, because sometimes they're just looking at common sense. Donald Trump would be a good example of that. Do you know why he finally gave in and went into politics? Barack Obama. He'll tell you that. He watched what Barack Obama did and how it just messed up everything in the country, and he looked at that and went, remember, he was a Democrat. And he looked at this and went, wow, that doesn't work. If anything else, President Trump is extremely pragmatic. He doesn't want to go down in flames for some ideological bent. He's not ideological. He's very much, as a builder, as a billionaire who has done, really great stuff in his business, he wants to do things that work. Guys, that's to our benefit as Christians. If you think about his 4 years, guys, America was never better in our history than those 4 years. Now think about that, because it's not like, I don't see Donald Trump as being a Christian. I don't see elements in his life that are there, but I am very thankful for that man. In the same way, I think that Daniel was probably pretty thankful for Nebuchadnezzar in some aspects. Nebuchadnezzar was not a good man, but he made some choices and decisions, some good, some bad, but that went the right direction. America was never better, because whether President Trump knew it or not, he was basically, as he tried to do things that worked, paralleling what the Bible says. He was putting principles in place that were biblical in nature. And through that process, guys, we soared. And don't miss this. The whole world soared. Please understand, this isn't just an America thing. Guys, when America is great, if you'll think about it, the rest of the world is great. Did we have lots of wars and conflicts during Trump's presidency? Nope, zero. Everybody was behaving themselves. You know why? Because all the leaders thought President Trump was nuts. Yeah. And that's not an accident. That's exactly what Trump is trying to do. He wants them to be terrified of what he might do. That's just good diplomacy, guys. So you have to understand that as we look at this, we had lower unemployment for absolutely everybody. We had the least amount of illegal immigration that was coming in. We had it fixed with the Remain in Mexico policy, all the things that he did. And God is very big on the sovereignty of nations, guys. These are biblical principles he was putting in place, whether he knew that or not. And all of these things were going the right direction up to the point of COVID. If you look at January and February of 2020, things were never better in America. And that's just statistically a fact. Look at the last 4 years. Things couldn't be more wrecked. As soon as Joe Biden came into office, he did the most executive orders anyone has ever done and wiped out everything Trump did, and we just started downhill. You have to understand, guys, you look at biblical principles. Get this, and this is important. This will surprise some of you. We're not political here at the Bridge. We're just saying, let's follow God's morality, and I can tell you flat out, the only party that has any basis of God's morality in it right now is the Republican Party. And I don't think that's a big surprise to you when you look at what's happening in our society. And so, the point is this: we support biblical morality and truth and direction and God's principles. And so from that perspective, we choose the best of what we have, with the full understanding that there are issues and problems, and we get that. We expect that. You look at how God used Cyrus in the Old Testament. Cyrus wasn't a godly man, and yet God named Cyrus 100 years before he was born and said he would be the key to his people being sent back to Israel to build that nation again. So God uses pagan leaders all the time. I really do hope, and I do pray, that President Trump and Melania will get right with God, that they'll follow God with their life. I want the best for them because they've meant so much to our nation, at least in those 4 years and hopefully in the future. But the point, guys, is we do this because this is what God's called us to do, and we do the best so that we can live a tranquil and quiet life in all godliness and dignity. That's our job directly from God. That's what we try and do. Remember this, guys. Politics doesn't change the world. It doesn't. That's our job. All right? All locations. That's our job. We, little by little, through our sphere of influence, we change the world by God's power and God's direction. All right? Not politics. Going a certain direction political just makes it harder or easier for us to do that. All right? That's all. All right? If the Republicans win, things get easier for us to be able to change the world. If, in fact, the Democrats win, it gets very much harder, like it has the last 4 years, for us to change the world, and for that matter, to pay the bills or to do anything through that process. So that's what we're trying to do. God's principles couldn't be more clear. We're simply following God's morality. In addition to that, this is not a 5-minute answer. And you notice I'm just going to go on. All right? I have the mic. I want you to think about this, guys, because people lots of times will go, oh, well, this is crazy. Jesus wasn't political. Really? Jesus was extremely political. What? Yeah. You've heard me talk about the Sanhedrin. I defined them yesterday, the Pharisees and the Sadducees. It was 70 men who ruled over Israel. Please understand that there was a group of men who politically ruled over Israel, Sanhedrin. Now, the Pharisees were religious and got nailed by Jesus like crazy. The Sadducees were irreligious. They didn't follow God. They were secularists, okay? But that was the political people. Jesus was always, if I can quote Raj from The Big Bang, Jesus was always up in their jammy, whatever the jammy is, all right? The reality is he was always giving it to them for the decisions they were making, how they were behaving, how they were leading the nation, etc. That was a constant that happened relative to Jesus. And so you look at that and go, oh, no, that was religious. Guys, he was talking to the people involved in the Sanhedrin, and there were some that were good. Remember Nicodemus? John chapter 3, the very guy Jesus said, for God so loved the world, all right? Nicodemus was a part of the Sanhedrin, but he was a good guy, all right? He was one of the good ones. But the reality is God used them regardless of that.